Hello, everyone.
And welcome to the January Q&A live.
Live. It's crazy.
It's crazy with Todd Coleman and Thomas Blair.
Yep. Creative director, lead designer. In case you didn't know, if you're showing up here, you probably knew. Maybe you don't. Well, now you do. The more you know.
The more you know. And we are here to talk today about all kinds of your questions, as well as the changes we have coming to the scoring mechanics.
Yeah, so the first thing that was suggested that we talk about just to kick things off is the scoring mechanic changes, because I did a write-up on this that went out last week.
Yep.
And so it seemed like a good time to also just talk through them to make sure that everybody understands how they work. So this is something that we are going to try and get in before first campaign, because right now we are finally to the point, which is awesome, where we have a playable game experience.
We have a playable thing.
We actually have a full thing that you can play and it comes to an end. However, on a bunch of little fronts, it's not quite working, right? It's not quite there. The biggest one that bothers me the most, because it's the original problem that we set out to solve for this game, is the Uncle Bob scenario.
Yep.
And for those of you who might not recall, the Uncle Bob scenario is basically also called slippery slope, and it is when you have a strategy game mechanic which results in the strong team only getting stronger, almost like without having to do anything. It's a self-reinforcing mechanism where the strong team gets stronger and the weak team gets weaker. The problem is you start to see over time a power disparity, and eventually the people who are not in the winning position will see that it's such a wide gap and that they have no chance of winning, so they quit. And that's the basic problem we set out to solve. In an MMO, it's especially hard if the game never ends. Like that, that's kind of the ultimate problem with slippery slope. But even in a game where the game does come to an end, you still see this. Games like Monopoly and Risk and things like that have suffered from this for years.
But they're short duration, right? They don't last.
Yes, absolutely.
Weeks and days.
And it is absolutely a function of time. That's the thing that is to keep in mind, is the longer you go on and the more that reinforcement mechanic has a chance to impact the game, the worse and worse and worse that power differential becomes between the kind of haves and the have-nots. So the haves-nots.
The have-nots.
The have-not. The haves and the have-nots. So what we're trying to do right now is we wanted to get the thing up. We wanted to actually try the game out, make sure that it was functional, and overall it is. I mean, we've got some service performance issues that we're still dealing with. Generally, in a lot of the situations, performance is better than it's ever been before, but we do have state problems where occasionally the server will get in a bad state and then it just all goes to hell. So we're working on all that as well. But the scoring mechanic itself was something that I felt like I wanted to address, and that's why you guys have noticed that we started with really short campaigns. Because if we start with very short, kind of only a couple day campaigns, that's less time for the slippery slope problem to surface. Right. So far, we've done usually 2 to 4 day campaigns, and I think we've only seen one of them across all those dozen or so campaigns we've done has been a nail biter at the end. And you know, ideally, not every game is going to be a nail biter, just like basketball or football or whatever, but those are the games that are really exciting, and so we need to have some of those. So I'm glad we had even one. That's awesome. But we need to adjust the scoring mechanics to make it possible for the game to kind of self-correct so that we can start doing longer campaigns. And I wanted to do that before our first sanctioned campaign, because I would really like that campaign to be longer. So how do you do that?
Let's get to...
So traditional ways to tackle this problem, I'll use bowling because it's the kind of most obvious example, is, or golf, right? Handicap. All right, well, Blair is just better at this game than Todd, so we're just going to give Todd some extra points. That is my least favorite way of addressing this problem from a game design standpoint, because it's just kind of lame, right?
Well, and you have to establish a handicap.
Yeah, and you have to establish how much to give and stuff like that. So that's just not as cool. So what we went looking for was a kind of self-correcting mechanic that would naturally benefit the weaker teams and feel organic without actually giving them a benefit that the other team couldn't get, that the winning team could not get. So what we came up with is basically a capture bonus pool. So in addition to the forts and the keeps and the outpost giving you points over time just for holding them, which means that if you're uncontested, you don't really have to do much.
Right.
We also put in bonus pool that is slowly growing the longer you hold on to a thing, that if somebody manages to dislodge you from that location and take it from you, they instantly get a bunch of points. So I like this one because, for one, by definition, it just kind of naturally will be more beneficial to the people who are further behind, because by definition, those people will have less bonus points in their pools.
Right.
The guy who, or the guys who have held stuff longer and more impact and held more important things longer will by definition have bigger pools. So that's kind of cool. That helps quite a bit. And then on top of that, the other thing I really like about this system is, in the current game when I log in, there's not really a lot of choice in what should we go and take. Like, all right, well, let's go take some forts. Which ones? I don't care.
Whichever.
They're all exactly the same,
Right.
so let's just go after which ones seem the least defended. So that's just not interesting choices. It is a choice, but it's not an interesting choice. This means that you'll have some targets which over the course of the campaign will become increasingly juicy. And I really think that's cool.
And you don't want to lose those.
No,
like as a defender.
No, as a defender, it's actually more important for me to keep you from getting this spot. So I think that's a big deal
Right.
as well. So, we came up with a series of tables for this one. One is basically, and it's for each of our types. So we've got keeps, forts, and then the outpost, of which there are two variants. There's campfires and towers. Right now they're basically the same, but that will change over time. And then by season, we also, spring, summer, fall, and winter, we have how many points do you get for holding this thing as one table. And then another table which is how many of those points, what percentage of those points should be funneled also into the capture pool, this
Yep.
bonus pool. And then we put another table which is a multiplier on that so that we could really make them juicy towards the end of the campaign. You see this in tabletop board games sometimes. Games like Seven Wonders does a great job of this. It has ages instead of seasons. And it does a really good job of keeping people engaged in the later seasons, because even if I come out the gate strong in season one, at the end of age one, as
Yeah.
they call it, in age two, you can still catch up and overcome me. And in age three, you can still catch up and overcome anybody, regardless. They get a definite advantage for having won age one and age two, but they're not automatically going to win. So that's what we're going for. There you go. There's a whole lot of talking for you.
Yeah.
So
And it's great because we're actually here where we can start making changes like
right,
this.
absolutely.
Rather
Yeah.
than worrying about a login thing or some other architectural thing,
Yeah.
it's actually the gameplay.
We've been in the process of building bricks now for years, so to actually start to see, I guess I shouldn't use a wall as an example. It's probably not the best. It's not it's
right now.
timely, but probably not the best example.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see the house come together.
Yes.
Is that better?
That's much better. So we need to see what we need to change, and things like this are great because it also shows you're playing. I was up late last night watching the end of the current campaign.
Yeah.
And it's wintertime, and there really wasn't a lot to do because the score is set.
Yeah, the score
win-
was already so set. So.
The winner was determined. Everyone knew it was who's going to win
Yeah.
at that point. So we're hoping these mechanics make it less of that.
Yeah, well, they should. The fact that, so let me give you some good news. So our overall activity has been peaked since we launched this build in mid-December. I think it was December 18th. We've been seeing about 3 times the number of concurrent players we did back in 5.7, and we've been seeing overall concurrency, nightly concurrency. The overall trend has just been slowly incrementing and going up. Basically, it's not necessarily every night, right? You have some normal fluctuations, but if you look at the overall trend, it's kind of up, which is fantastic. Especially given that I have heard from a number of the players, like, we love the fact that you have a scoring mechanic, and we love that the whole game is there, but we're still not quite to the point where we're paying that much attention
Right.
to the scoring mechanic because of these things that are outstanding. So there's a handful of other things like that I know we've got to deal with too. The night flipping is a big one, right? The fact that a couple of people can go flipping outpost to outpost and even fort to fort at night, and in doing so they can basically make up the point gap or extend the point gap so much overnight that it kind of screws with the scoring. This will help that problem because it means that in the morning you can make up that difference with the capture point pool with that bonus.
Yep.
But it's still not going to solve that problem. So we have another step we need to do on that, which we'll get to later. But the fact that we're to this point and it's starting to hang together as an actual full playable experience is really, really awesome.
Yeah.
So
and we're getting great feedback on the combat side for specific talents, and Halish and I have already made a series of tweaks that are going into 5.8.1, which is our next update. So it's great to see people actually playing stuff.
Yeah, so we've got a whole bunch of stuff going on internally right now. So we've got this 5.8 version right now. We've got which we've been calling first campaign, but it's really first campaign, the milestone, not the sanction campaign.
Right.
So we're building up to the actual first sanction campaigns. Then we've also got this other version that's just some fixes and this capture bonus pool thing. So that we're calling that internally 5.8.1. Debbie Sue's probably going to frown at me and be like, stop using numbers. So it's first campaign plus. You got to give me a name for it.
I like that.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Should we just so we'll get that stuff in shortly. Like we're working on it literally as we speak. In fact, I think we're putting up right now a patch that is some of the bug fixes in that, but it doesn't have the bonus.
That's going on test.
It's going on test.
That's going on our test
today,
server.
right?
Yeah,
okay.
It was the plan.
Cool. So in fact, I think patch notes already kind of went up. So that'll have a bunch of rounds of Blair and Halish changes in it as well.
You were about to say nerfs, weren't you?
No, I wasn't actually, but and it's not just nerfs, right? You guys also love to just take a random class and make it completely OP. So it's not just nerfs. It's really about tilting the balance in crazy directions on accident.
Well, it's also like it's on purpose.
Okay, I know. I just give you hell.
It's watching the way people are playing things. Like for example, the stealth ranger, the brigand.
Yep.
Just a couple weeks ago, it was like probably 2 weeks ago. He just didn't feel like he had a role.
Yeah.
So I put 2 more traps in the game. They have a fairy trap now, and a concussive trap was a stun trap. And that branch is now about being stealthy and traps.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's great because I saw one totally.
I like that from a vision standpoint. That's a cool idea. That's a nice basic digestible vision to be able to pitch that as.
But when it came out, some of those traps didn't exist, and the trap that did exist was in Warden, which is the brawler version of the Ranger.
Yeah.
So it was kind of shifting stuff around, and now it's much more cohesive and way more fun to play.
I could tell. So we did a massive. Gordon and I came in this weekend, and we were basically here the whole time, effectively going through the massive backlog of bugs. Right? There's always bugs in an MMO, but we've kind of had some that have been rolling forward for a long time, and so Gordon and I just realized like we need to go through these. We need to figure out which bucket they go into and where they're going to fall and all that kind of stuff. And I did notice there were above average number of ranger bugs. I don't know what it is about that class in particular, but I guess it's because it has such a wide variety of things it can do, and it also has such a reliance on archery. But and stealth now. It's got stealth as well. So there were a large mass of ranger-related bugs that hopefully will get addressed pretty soon here. So
and some of them just got swept away.
Will actually be happy with us for the first time ever.
A lot of them got swept away by the talent system.
Yeah,
because we changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
so
I think we're ready for some
so then
questions.
on top of that, well, real quick. So the other things that are coming then is we've also got character controller changes that are coming.
Okay, you're going through all the branches.
That's gotta come online. I started, so I might as well.
Okay, yeah.
And then we've got the forward-looking actual new feature stuff that we need to get into alpha. So. So between that and all these bug fixes and character controller and first, we've got a lot. We've got a busy month or two coming ahead of us. I mean, it is a launch year though, so actually we're just gonna have a busy year.
Yeah.
Should look at it realistically.
And have we explained what the character controller is going to give them?
I don't think we've talked about it very much.
Okay.
Good idea or bad idea? I'm looking at Debbie Sue to see how much we want to talk about it.
I'd say go minimal.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it is definitely meaty enough that it deserves kind of its own update.
Yeah.
But it will have impact on overall performance, on how the game feels, just the overall smoothness,
and
how the game looks when other players are moving around.
Right. So you see a lot of crazy little stutter stepping in the distance of other players,
and a lot of kind of weird oddities that have been in there forever. Like when I hit you. The fact that you knock back so high in the air and it looks kind of odd, it's going to clean a lot of that stuff up as well.
Yeah.
So this is actually investment that we started like half a year ago. Was it that long? I mean, it was a long time ago. We had some programmers going off and saying, look, this is an area we just need to clean up. Go clean it up. Go make it great. And so they've been working on that. We're actually at the point now where that would already be integrated in, except that it kind of was hitting at the same time as First Campaign. And as a company, First Campaign took priority. So they're kind of now waiting on that train to pull out of the station to make room for that one to come in. Just a lot of stuff going on, all really, really great. I mean, but it certainly is, if it feels a little chaotic outside, just imagine inside how hard it is to basically get all these moving parts working in sync. So cool. So yeah, I'm open to do some questions. That sounds great.
Yep. What you got for us?
Oh, did you want to? So this is our amulet, by the way, of warding off bad questions. So I'm going to warn you that we may have to invoke the amulet. What do you think?
Yeah, is that our fifth?
That's the amulet. The tennis amulet is what I'm going to call it.
Is that what it is?
Tennis always gives me the hardest questions, so I'm gonna make it this is the amulet of tennis protection.
Okay, so the first question I'll throw out.
Is it from tennis?
No.
Okay, good. All right.
He's had a few good questions in common.
He has great ones, but he also has really hard ones.
Yes.
So
there's one about what you're describing. Will that just make people not care about seasons 1 and 2?
I don't think so, because you still do get benefits. So that's the mathematical thing we have to do, right? Like I said with Seven Wonders, nobody waits and does nothing until the last age. You're absolutely trying to do the best you can because you want to be in the best position going into those later seasons. So we have to make sure that it's not like I just don't care at all. I don't expect that'll be the case. Usually what we see is a spike in traffic at the beginning of the campaign. A new campaign comes up and we see really, really high concurrency. That was absolutely what I saw back in the Shadowbane days. It kind of led us down this path in the first place, was we would bring a new world online after a wipe and we would see our numbers go through the roof. You would expect to then see a corresponding bump at the end as well when it's winter and it's a nail biter and everybody's in and they're trying to win. So you kind of see a double hump. We're not seeing that second hump yet, so I'm trying to do that. Now it may be that we swing the pendulum too far to the other side, and that as a result people are like, I don't care as much about spring and summer. I don't expect that to be the case because that land rush has a great feeling to it and it's an emotional response. But if we numerically overshoot the mark, then we'll tap it back in place. That's actually why I want to get this thing out before our first sanctioned campaign, because I want to have a couple shots of narrowing in on the numbers to get the numbers to feel right before we actually put any kind of focus on it.
And the activities are going to be different in spring and summer, ideally, than fall and winter.
Yeah, it's more of build mode.
Right, it's more build mode, gathering as much stuff as you can, preparing for winter.
Yeah,
right.
And strategizing. Right,
and in like Dreg's Worlds, you're leveling at that point as well. Right.
Yeah, and exploring the map and figuring out it's that. I mean, this is fairly normal for a strategy game. In fact, a lot of times in a strategy game, they will put a hard wall up and say, this is your build modes part of the game, and this is your now you fight it out part of the game that reaches a resolution. So we didn't make it quite so clear, but I think this will start to move us in that direction. We'll see. I mean, as with everything, we have an idea, we put it out, you guys play it, we figure out where we were wrong, as inevitably it's not perfect, and then we make adjustments to it. And you're starting to see now that process is paying off. That's, I think, the right way for us to approach this development. So.
Okay, one more question was, will the forts and keeps be hostile at the beginning when the campaign starts? How are you going to handle what status they're in at the very beginning?
So we started with them being claimable at the beginning, and we didn't like that because it made it too much of a rush out and grab whatever you can. So now we've made it to where they're neutral, or at least the keeps are assigned to the things. Have we done that with forts yet? We talked about it.
Right, we talked about it.
I don't know. I don't think they're assigned. So when War Tribes comes online, I would like to see monsters able to possess things.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would be really, really cool, but that's not something that'll happen in the near term. It's something that'll happen more going into alpha. But I'm hoping that we can actually get it to where the clans and War Tribes start to feel sort of like AI-driven other factions that you have to deal with. They won't be obviously as effective as player factions. Well, maybe they'll be more effective than some player factions, but if we can get them to the point where they make the world feel more alive, they add a little bit more challenge. And the nice thing about AI, in spite of the fact that it's not as challenging, is AI is always ready for you. Like, no matter when you log in or who else is on, there's always some level of challenge there, and that's kind of nice. So our worlds right now do not have that feeling of being alive for that reason. And so we do need to shore up that a little bit. Right? We're never going to be a PvE focused game, but that doesn't mean we don't need a strong PvE component. So hopefully that's something we'll be able to get to very shortly. Okay. So it's in the pipe. I'm working on it now. Questions?
Yep, one more. While she looks for that, I can give you one. Okay, she got it.
Right, so any plans to make guards more diverse, such as different damage types, melee mobs, ways for guards to counter a single discipline?
Yeah, so this falls right into war clans.
Let's do the question, because I don't know if they heard it. The question was, do you plan to make the guards not suck? Which is basically...
and more diverse. So it was two things. It was about diversity of the guards just to make them more interesting and also make them more effective. So the effective part, we really need to start tackling that now. And I don't know where that is in the pipe. I know we've talked about it, but I don't know where it's going to fall. It would be great if we could get some of that at least into 5.8.1. So we'll need to follow up on that after this. I would really like, there's two pieces to it I would like to see. One is I'd like to see players be able to invest in ranking up their forts and keeps, and in doing so increase their defenses, including the guards. Number two is, I mentioned the clans, war tribes idea, is I think it'd be really cool if you had, if here's a Centaur Legion and it starts to spread much like the Hunger spreads, and it spreads close enough to actually take over a fort, then the guards inside are now Centaur Legionnaires. That's kind of my ultimate vision for how I would like that stuff.
And Centaurs Legionnaires do different powers than whatever.
They would be different, right?
Right. So
So taking that to the next logical extension, it would also then be cool for players to be able to have some choice in what kind of guards they want there. That gets a little dicey because in the faction-based worlds there is no leader. Factions are kind of these loose-knit democracies of people, and nobody really has a say because you can't control who's in there. But so our historical solution has been to make it all additive, right? So you can't really grief the faction because all you can do is chip wood into the wall just like me. Right. So that you can't do it. The worst thing you can do is nothing. Right. And that's not really a thing. So we might be able to figure that out by ranking them and having it be we're all just choosing to push them up. Or we could potentially make it flavored based on the fort. The fort, this is a Centaur Legionnaire fort, and now it becomes a decision for our team. Which of these do we want to take? Do we want to take the one with the Centaurs, or do we want to take the one with the Rangers? And why? Well, they have different...
the Rangers are in there because it worked.
Yeah, sure.
And we didn't have to deal with it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. We are going to make it much cooler.
Yeah, and there's still a couple things about it that are a little wonky. Like, you'll notice they have animation issues right now. The reason for that is the art was actually created to be player characters. And player characters have different combat stances. Yeah. Monsters don't. And so that's why you see kind of weird funkiness with their animations. So it's another thing we need to fix in order to get the war tribes done.
And they're rooted. They're basically turrets because we didn't want to trust the movement code.
And AI, and stuff like that.
All of that stuff. So
there's a bunch.
We put in basically what we could get in there that would work.
Yeah.
And it seems to have worked up until this point, but we are clearly going to make it much better.
Right. And we if we can get some ranking up now, I'll see if that's a possibility. If we can do a little bit of balance adjustment, I think that would be helpful. So.
Okay, here's another one.
Okay.
One is, what are your opinions on wall integrity, both fort and keep? Currently, many classes can get through or over them with abilities and dodges.
Yeah, we're going to have to come up with some counters to that for sure. We need to make those things. So if the walls cannot protect your team, then the walls don't really serve a purpose in the game. So we went to all the trouble to making walls, so we need to make it to where they are something that you can invest in, and in doing so, you can get some team protection.
What we'd always intended for the duelist, the vision was that they could burrow under the walls.
Right.
And not a whole team is not going to be comprised of duelists.
But we have to also, at the same time, we have to plan for, well, if that's the case, then why wouldn't I make a crack team of duelists who can go in, and that's where you have guards that need to come into play.
Yeah, a small team is great.
We need to, I totally recognize that is not the intention. It was interesting. I had somebody point out to me recently that when they're crafting in a fort is actually the moment where their heart is pounding the most in our game, because they are at that point the most defenseless and also the juiciest target for somebody to come and take. So that wasn't the intent. We do need to make some changes there, and I have some ideas for how to do it. Let me kind of put off giving you guys a full answer on that, though, until we've at least kind of had a chance to talk through all of those changes and come to resolution. I have a number of ideas of things that I want to do, but I do recognize that it's a problem. How's that? So
next question.
The next one was.
Did we ask that? Did we tell them what the question is on that last one? We need to make sure that we do that. Okay.
So this question is, will this new rule set that you're discussing about the capture mechanics, will that apply to the dregs?
The capture bonus. The capture bonus is right now in my mind a general mechanic that I intend to use for all the campaigns. Yeah. So,
okay.
Yes.
And then a quick one was changing some of the debuffs on the crafters and harvesters in fall and winter. Can we get a relook on the debuffs?
Yeah, so I will repeat the question, and I'll add some flavor to it, because I know is, Blair, why you got to be so mean in fall and winter?
I know.
Like, wow, it's really, really harsh. So harsh, in fact, that I have heard from players that by the time fall and winter come around, it's so painful. Well, and this is especially true with short campaigns. They think to themselves, I'll just wait and join the next campaign. It'll be spring. Now, that obviously that second part will go away once we have longer campaigns, but it's still a very valid point, I think, and one that I'm glad they called you out on the table. Is it seems a bit excessive right now. So
we can always look at those numbers.
All right.
Right. I mean, the goal is that in fall and winter, the primary goal is winning.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, there is going to be other content that you can do in winter as well. It's not. Right now, our only content has been harvesting for so long.
I know, and
right?
It's certainly for a lot of our players not their most fun part of the game, right? And on top of that, I think it was a little grueling. And we screwed up in 5.8 and introduced a bug where the white materials on the vendors shot up in price to where they were no longer a functional part of the loop, and that was just a mistake.
Yeah.
So we fixed that in 5.8.1. That fix is actually in the pipe right now. So if you get on the test server, you should see that fixed already.
But if you look at historically, our content has been harvesting, like 90% of it, and bad AI, right? Like we had the Hellcats and the zombies for just the longest time. In 6.0, we're going to see, once the tribe stuff starts coming online, they will be interesting to go hunt down.
Right.
Once Thralls comes in, it'll be interesting to go hunt for discipline. Right. I mean, all of these other content pieces are missing.
And there's another one, which is the quarry, mine, and mill loop.
Right.
Pieces of it are in right now, but it's technically not firing. So the toast message doesn't go off that says the dead man's quarry has produced stone, right? So there's supposed to be a toast message that says, oh, I need to go and get stone. We don't have caravans, so right now players will have to carry that stuff, and we need to be able to block recall so that at the moment you go pick it up, you can't just recall out, because those are supposed to be additional PvE activities or PvP activities. Right, I go out there. There is some monsters to clear out, but the reason we're doing a toast message is so that people know to go and get that stuff. And then we've talked quite a bit about refineries as well, adding recipes where players can take a block and turn it into a bunch of resources. It's still definitely something we could do. I haven't said definitely we're going to do it yet, because I want to see all the other pieces that we expect come into place first. My fear is if we put that in and later decide that we need to take it out, that'll be incredibly unpopular. So I'd rather not do it yet, but if we do decide we need it, then it is something that we can do.
Yeah,
so,
I like to equate it to, we've just been serving bread for the past 2 years for content.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, I'm sick of bread.
Yeah.
And it's like, yep, we haven't built any of the other side dishes. We have, like...
Well, especially since there's a fair chunk of our players who they don't like bread in the first place.
Right.
Like they're a meat eater. So that's totally valid. Absolutely
valid. Once more content comes online, and once we take away the ability to make disciplines at will, and you actually have to go find the good ones, right? We're introducing all these things that you can do other than harvest.
Right.
Unfortunately, right now, that is what we have.
Yep.
So by 6.0, they're going to feel a lot of that. They'll have a lot of choices.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the content models coming online is just going to make the game just blossom at that point.
Cool. So but I guess my summary would be, we hear you. Yes, I know, and I know that you guys have a bunch of, not just you guys, but there's a bunch of players outside of you as well that are like, hey, there's just too much crafting or too much harvesting in this game. I just don't want to do it all the time.
Right.
And as long as we can have other avenues to make sure that the items are easy come, easy go, and there's a couple things we need to do to make sure that's the case, then I think we'll be fine. We still aren't quite there yet, but we are definitely moving in that direction.
Well, I mean, once you just have to go find your disciplines rather than they're just given to you, that's going to be like, oh, I'm constantly on the look for Mole Hunter, or I'm constantly for whatever makes my build the best. Right, so that's going to introduce a whole nother tier of gameplay.
Right, and a lot of times is perfect for that. It's a perfect place to stage those items.
You're going to have to. Sometimes the build that you want to make is not going to be an option because you just don't have those disciplines.
Yeah, so you're going to have to go find it and make it an option.
Or you're going to have to use the disciplines you have, which means the builds are going to start to feel even more different because you're like, oh, you know what? This is a really good discipline that I never would have tried unless it was.
That's true.
Right, so we're going to see it again. Because we've just got bread, I'm sorry about that, but that's what we got. You got to deal with the bread for now.
Well, it's starting to come together, though. We're starting to have a campaign now that actually is starting to feel like a thing. It's just that there are certain loops, like the caravan loop and the building materials loop and the wall loop, what for various reasons don't quite work. And we're going to hit each of those in turn. That's it.
Okay, this will be our last one, unfortunately.
Well, that's not, so Debbie Sue said this will be the last question, unfortunately, but actually it's not that unfortunate because we have another live stream coming on Thursday with Zybeck, and that is when I will throw away the amulet of bad question protection, and he's going to come at us with whatever he's got, and we'll answer to the degree we can.
From Honras to put you in for that Q&A session.
So,
okay,
all right, so what do you got?
We get the life tree and bane trees more protected, cycling immunity to damage powers, something where you can't harm the tree till the defenders are all dead rather than ignored. I think the basic question, jumping over that, here's how you should fix it. Let me go back to the base problem first, which is, hey, the trees and the tree of life and the banewood tree, they cycle too quickly. They're killed too easily. I think that's what they're basically saying. So that's just a balance thing that you guys need to go and take a look at. That may be the right solution, or it may not. I don't know.
The funny part to me is in our internal testing building up to first campaign, everyone's been like, the walls have too much health, the vehicles have too much health, everything has too much health. So we knock it down so people can beat it internally, but then when players get in there, you have 5 times the numbers that we have.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden everything just explodes.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? But QA's like, man, these walls take forever. It takes 5 to 10 minutes. It's like, well, when there's a lot of people there, they're going to melt, right? So this is,
and they do,
Yeah. So this is kind of an internal game that we have to get over of balancing for QA to be able to play it and you guys being able to actually play it as we intended. So yep. All right.
If people have additional questions that didn't get answered,
I'm sure they do. They always do.
Those on the forums, and we'll be sure to try to get some of those answered after the fact.
Yeah, that's totally cool. Yep.
All right.
And you can always send them to Zybeck and let him him sort through them and figure out which ones he wants. Is that gonna be on our?
Yes.
So that'll be here also on our Twitch stream.
On our Twitch
okay.
as well.
Cool.
Okay, so we'll see you guys on Thursday.
We'll see you on Thursday. All right. Cool. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks,
see you.
See you in game.
Yep.
Ooh.